Hey everyone, so there's a bit of a debate right now as to whether or not Donald Trump utilized economic populist rhetoric in his 2016 presidential campaign. And I personally think that he absolutely did. But first, I wanted to define the word populism and then kind of go from there. So, the word populism is defined as a political approach that strives to appeal to ordinary people who feel that their concerns are disregarded by established elite groups. Now, it might sound kind of counterintuitive based on what we know about Donald Trump now that he would use populist rhetoric, but he 100% did use economic populist rhetoric specifically, as well as in terms of foreign policy. But I'll talk about that later in the video. But there are some who disagree that he utilized that, namely Sam Cedar. And Sam Cedar is someone that I actually agree with on like so many things. So I was a little disappointed to see that he had this take, just because I think that it is devoid from reality. I think that he is missing a huge element of Donald Trump's 2016 campaign, and he's overlooking it to kind of make a bit of a dismissive point. But I think that he's really missing the mark on this one. So I'm going to play the clip, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Because I want to know exactly what populist, what economic populism Donald Trump pushed. Now, he did say that he wouldn't cut Social Security or Medicare. Fair enough. But I want to know, relative to Hillary Clinton, from a policy standpoint, not from like what her record had been and this and that, because Glenn has now moved it to like, what if we could believe what he was saying, right? So we're going to take both candidates at face value. What did Donald Trump say that was more economic populist than Hillary Clinton? Economically, because there is a form of populism that Donald Trump certainly did promote, and it was nativism, undoubtedly, far greater than his so-called economic populism. But I wouldn't know, like, yes, he spoke far more economically populist than a typical Republican, but he didn't offer anything more economic populist than Hillary Clinton, did he?
All right, and so sorry to cut off Jamie there. But I think that Sam is really missing, and maybe if I was having a conversation with Sam, he would not consider what I'm about to say to be economic populism. But I think that it is. I don't know what else you would categorize it as. So a lot of people forget this because it just people. I don't know why, because there's so much else to talk about with Donald Trump, but I think that this is something that a lot of people overlook, and they have their initial impressions on it, and it just kind of goes one way or another. When Donald Trump first started his campaign, he said that he was self-funding his campaign. He said that he was not taking donations and that he was self-funding it. There are a ton of people that think that that is what he did. I have had conversations with people like recently who think that he did not take contributions, that he funded his own campaign. They think that he funded his general election campaign, and they think that he funded his campaign in the Republican primary. Both of those are that is not true. He accepted corporate donations and big money donations in both of those races. But there are so many people that think that he self funded his campaign. Parallel that with Hillary Clinton. There's not a single person that did not think that Hillary Clinton took money from Wall Street, that Hillary Clinton took money from big banks, that Hillary Clinton took money from just corporate entities. That is a big thing for people. If you look at the polling, money in politics, it is the polling overwhelmingly shows that people support getting money out of politics. And I personally think that that is one of the most important issues of our era. I think that it is the issue that if you solve this thing, the rest of the things will start to fall in the line, because other issues, for the most part, the progressive idea is the popular idea. If we're talking about Medicare for all, ending the wars, all these things, the progressive idea is the popular one. So if we can get corporations to stop donating to politicians and stop influencing their decision making, I think that we can start to see some real change. But now, it's just so important to remember, Donald Trump did not self-fund his campaign, but he said that he did, and that is something that a lot of people thought. I've had so many conversations with people where they think that that is what he did, and even people that don't like Donald Trump, I've had conversations where they think that he self-funded his campaign, and I'm like, no, but that's something that I think that Sam Cedar is looking at, kind of like he's trying to do the bird's eye view, where he's trying to say like, oh, he talked about wanting to cut Social Security, or not wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare, and that was like the economic populism. Honestly, probably a lot of people didn't hear that. Like, we gotta remember, like, if you're watching this video, you probably pay a decent amount of attention to politics, but like, a lot of you probably pay a lot of attention to politics, but that is not everybody. That is so not everybody. And so we got to look at these things at the most surface level that we can. Like Joe Biden. Let's talk about Joe Biden for a second. The reason why I think he's a Democratic nominee, he was vice president, former vice president, huge name recognition. That's why. I think that we can talk all day about the little policy nuances and like, oh, he supports single payer, Bernie supports Medicare for all, and oh, he doesn't support entirely free colleges, this that. It is people's perception of them, and it is very base value things that at the end of the day is what influences most elections. Just most people don't pay that closely attention. And I think that Joe Biden, incredible name recognition. People want someone that can beat Trump. They thought that Joe Biden was the guy. I think that is undoubtedly the reason. So if we're talking about Donald Trump's campaign, I think that a lot of people saw him. They heard a couple things. They heard his like what Sam Cedar described, the nativist rhetoric, very nationalist, very anti-immigration. People will get upset that I said anti-undocumented immigration. He was not, I guess, he says he's not against immigration. Regardless, that was one element. The other element was anti-establishment. That is what he ran on. He was drain the swamp, all this. Now, people will be like, oh, so the swamp is actually good because he said drain the swamp. No. People, when they want to oppose Trump, they do it in the worst possible ways. I'm sorry. I know Democrats are supposed to be the allies, whatever. There are so many Democrats that oppose Trump in the dumbest ways possible. I am being totally serious. Like Donald Trump will say that he wants to end the wars, and they will say, oh, we should actually maintain the wars. No, the way to criticize Donald Trump is to point out that he is lying. He doesn't actually want to end the wars. He doesn't actually self-fund his campaign. He doesn't actually want to drain the swamp. He put so many elitist establishment people. He had like the former head of Goldman Sachs. He appointed to the head of the Treasury Department. That's about as like swampy as you can get. Mike Pompeo, John Bolton. These are the people that he filled his cabinet with. Steve Bannon, like these just atrocious figures. So you don't say, oh, you don't oppose Donald Trump by just going like off the surface level, just base opposite of what he did. Like when he wanted to pull the troops from Syria, people were like, oh, I think that we should keep the troops in Syria. No, you look at it and you say, oh, he didn't actually withdraw the troops and bring them back home. He just moved them to Iraq. That is how you oppose Donald Trump, that he's lying, that he's not actually doing these progressive things. You don't immediately like move to the right of him. It's just some people oppose Donald Trump in the worst possible ways. Sam Cedar isn't doing that, but what he is he's just overlooking something that is, I think, a really important thing that a lot of people don't talk about that much. Donald Trump gave the perception that he was anti-establishment, that he self-funded his campaign, and that's important to a lot of people. Most people think that government is corrupt, and when you have someone that looks like they are not a part of that, that really resonates with a ton of people. It just does. There's so many people don't trust our government, and Donald Trump gave that to a lot of people. Now, the way you oppose that is not to say that like, oh, like the corruption is actually good or something. You say that Donald Trump is the corruption. He embodies the corruption wholeheartedly. He takes all these donations. He puts these goons in his cabinet. That is how you oppose Donald Trump, not to just go at the surface level opposition of what he says. And then the final thing I want to say, because I don't think it gets talked about enough, one of the reasons that Donald Trump won is because he campaigned like crazy in the swing states. Like he was there constantly, so many rallies. If you look at the number of rallies Donald Trump held in swing states versus the number of rallies Hillary Clinton held in swing states, I mean, that tells you the whole story of the election right there. I mean, the states that they needed to win, the states that Donald Trump flipped, the swing states, he was there hundreds more times than Hillary Clinton was. It was embarrassing, the campaign that Hillary Clinton ran. And so I don't think that gets talked about enough. I don't think that people acknowledge the economic populism that Donald Trump ran on and how it had an effect on people. Now, that's not to say that like it was right, that he was right. The rhetoric was good in some areas, the economic populism. Other areas not good. But what I'm saying is that we need to we got to be more nuanced about these things. We got to just because it comes out of Donald Trump's mouth doesn't mean that it's necessarily a bad thing, because sometimes he lies about things. And so if he comes out tomorrow and says, "Oh, I support Medicare for all," we don't say, "Oh, Medicare for all is now bad." We say, "Are you telling the truth? Are you being honest?" And it's just very frustrating the way that some people decide to go against Trump. Anyway, that's kind of the wrapping up of this video. If you guys disagreed with anything I said, please leave a comment down below. But if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and have a great day.